on the west coast of Scotland, the largest landfill in the Ayrshire region. Bulldozer operator Davy had started work that morning like any other day. With music playing on the radio, he was searching for his pack of cigarettes, humming a tune left over from Saturday's match. Nothing in his life had prepared him for what he would see that day. In the distance, the jagged silhouette of the Isle of Arran was visible. The sun had risen, and the blue sky was stained by plumes of smoke rising from the landfill. As Davy pushed his tracked vehicle forward, he noticed something strange among the piles of rubbish ahead. Was it a pole? A railing? No, this was something entirely different. His supervisor was approaching in a four-wheeler, orange light flashing, shouting, but Davy couldn't hear. His eyes were locked on that shape rising from among the refuse. Arms and legs hung at odd angles, and in the middle, a sharp stake stretched from the ground to the sky. "Stop, Davy! Stop!" His supervisor opened the vehicle door. "That's a body! Someone's impaled it!" Inspector Detective Bob Valentine was a renowned name within the Scottish police force. However, he was now on an old exercise bike in the gym at Tullyalland Police College. Sweat curled on his forehead, and even 10 minutes of light exercise had left him strained. The doctor wanted much more, but Valentine was afraid to push that muscle in the middle of his chest. His heart had suffered enough already. When he looked in the mirror, he saw the dark hair at his temples. Still thick, that was a good thing. But the dark circles under his eyes and that weary expression on his face told a different story. 6 months ago, a young criminal named Darren Haney had plunged his knife into Valentine's chest. The blade had entered the left ventricle of his heart. It had punctured through his diaphragm. When he arrived at the hospital, his heart had nearly stopped. He died twice on the operating table and came back twice. They gave him 50 units of blood. 50 units! The human body only contains 8 units of blood. So there was nothing left of Valentine's own blood in his veins anymore. This experience had changed him. He couldn't fully understand how it had changed him, but he felt that something was different. It was as if returning from death's threshold, he had brought something back with him. When his mobile phone rang, he saw Chief Superintendent Marion Martin's name on the screen. The boss, nicknamed Dino, was calling him back from the academy. A body had been found at the landfill, and Valentine would be leading the investigation. Valentine decided to stop by the crime scene before going to King Street Station. Police tape had been strung up at the entrance to the landfill. Kids on bikes were circling around the cordon. Curious women were leaning against walls gossiping. News of a murder spread quickly in a small town. When he parked his car, Sergeant McAllister was the first to approach. His eyes narrowed. He seemed surprised to see Valentine. "I'd heard you were back, but I didn't want to believe it," he said. Valentine shrugged. "Skip the welcome party. Tell me what you've found." Around the white tent, the crime scene investigation team was working in white suits resembling space gear. Flies were everywhere. The hot weather and the smell of rubbish created an unbearable combination.
White male, late 50s, and dead. Definitely dead, said McAllister. Valentine put on plastic gloves and walked toward the tent. Inside was even hotter than outside. The smell had intensified. Purple light fly traps were working, but were ineffective. When he saw the body, he studied the expression on its face. Strangely, it looked almost peaceful. But this was an illusion, because when you looked at the lower part of the body, the horrific truth was revealed. A thick wooden stake had been driven through the victim's body, a savage death reminiscent of medieval torture. McAllister, what do you think this means? Asked Valentine. Could be a child molester, retaliation, punishing them the same way. Valentine shrugged his head. That's just a guess. We don't have a single piece of evidence to support that. For now, file that away in the back of your mind. Valentine examined the crime scene. The victim had been brought in through the wall. Blood and fabric fibers had been found in the narrow gap in the wall. This meant the body had been killed elsewhere and transported here. Was the killer alone, or did he have an accomplice? The victim wasn't a large or muscular person. A medium-built man could have carried him alone, but two people would have done the job more cleanly. The wedding ring on the victim's finger caught his attention. He was married. When he examined his mouth, he saw expensive dental implants. This man was wealthy, and wealthy people were connected people. Such people don't end up found impaled on a stake in a landfill. Unless, of course, they'd made a big mistake. When Valentine emerged from the tent, Fiscal Cullen approached him. He was saying something about official procedures. You can't move the body without a death certificate, you know the rules, and so on. Valentine brushed him off. The doctor had already come and gone. The certificate was on its way. As he returned to his car, McAllister came up beside him. So what's your thinking, sir? I don't deal in guesses, but I can tell you this. There's a single perpetrator. Our victim is wealthy and probably well-connected. People like that don't die for ordinary reasons. And that stake is a message. The killer wants to tell the world something. Door-to-door inquiries had begun. One of the neighbors had seen a white van around 9 o'clock at night. The same vehicle had passed by again at 9:30. It could have been a delivery van, or something much worse. The next morning, King Street Station was a busy place. Valentine had been summoned to Chief Superintendent Martin's office. The woman was sitting at her desk, reading Valentine's medical file. 50 units of blood, she murmured, holding up the paper. That can't be right, can it? It's right, Valentine said calmly. The blood I spilled on the operating theater floor wasn't my blood anymore anyway. Martin began to laugh. I suppose black pudding was on the menu that night, eh? Valentine's insides trembled. Being stabbed through the heart, his family's tears, dying and being resurrected twice, these weren't joking matters, but he couldn't tell his boss that. I want you to continue with the psychotherapy sessions. This isn't a suggestion, it's an order. Valentine wanted to object, but held himself back. He would endure anything to get this case. Just then, the door opened. A strange expression appeared on Martin's face. Do you want the good news or the bad news? Give me the good news first. The victim has been identified. And guess what? The man was a banker. Valentine's eyes widened. The victim's name was James Urquhart. He was the former chairman of a brokerage firm that had been sold to Bank of Scotland 3 months before the 2008 financial crisis. He'd sold the company just before the crisis hit, probably retiring with millions of pounds. "So, what's the bad news?" asked Valentine. Martin straightened Valentine's tie. "Pull yourself together. The press is all over this story." A very strange juxtaposition of old money and modern design greeted Valentine and McAllister. Their cheap Vauxhall seemed small, even improper, as it passed through the automatic gates on Monument Road. They pulled up to an alloqué-shaped house with extended roofs and huge windows. This was not an ordinary neighborhood. Red brick mansions and modern architectural marvels stood side by side. BMWs and Range Rovers gleamed in every garage. As they drove up the long gravel driveway, Valentine reviewed the file one last time. James Urquhart was 58 years old. He lived in this mansion with his wife Sandra and son Adrian. At least, he had, until last night. The person who greeted them at the door was a pale young man in his early 20s, Adrian Urquhart. His hands were buried in his pockets, his shoulders slumped, avoiding eye contact. The acne scars on his forehead stood out in the sunlight. "My mother's inside," he said in a low voice. When they entered the living room, they found Sandra Urquhart beside a red-faced man. The man was a neighbor named Ronnie and had his arm around the woman's shoulder. When he saw Valentine, he immediately pulled back. "I'll pop by later," Ronnie said, heading toward the door. "To see how you're doing." Valentine watched the man's back. Something didn't feel right, but for now, he filed that away. Sandra Urquhart tried to stand up, but lost her balance. Adrian rushed over to steady her. The woman's eyes were swollen. Dark hollows had formed above her cheekbones. She'd received news of her husband's death, and it had devastated her. "Please sit down, Mrs. Urquhart," said Valentine gently. "I need to ask you a few questions." That night when Valentine returned home, he saw the expression on Claire's face. She had noticed the blue files, murder files. Claire didn't want him going back to this work. Her husband had nearly died, and now he was throwing himself back into the same dangerous job. "Was I stupid to think anything would change?" said Claire, stubbing out her cigarette. Valentine tried to explain. "I feel different. It's like this second chance has given me a purpose. I need to make a difference." But Claire wasn't listening. She turned her back and went into the bedroom. At midnight, Valentine found himself at the landfill. But something was different. There were no flies. It was dark, and he felt something. His heart was pounding like crazy in his chest. Then he saw her, a little girl, 5 or 6 years old. She was wearing a bright red raincoat. Her hair was platinum blonde, just like Fiona and Chloe's when they were little, and she was holding a bunch of daisies in her hand. "Hey, Who let this child in here? Valentine shouted, but no one heard him. The other officers were acting as if they couldn't see the girl. The girl laughed. She walked toward the body. She placed the daisies on the victim's chest. The flowers began to shimmer like fairy lights. Valentine lunged forward, but was grabbed by the arms. He was being held. He tried to break free. "Let me go! Get the girl away!" Then he heard Claire's voice. He was sitting bolt upright in bed. He was drenched in sweat. "You were dreaming," said Claire. "No," said Valentine. "That wasn't a dream. I was there, somewhere else."
The next day, when Valentine arrived at the office, files were waiting on his desk. More information about James Urquhart had begun to come in. Urquhart had sold his company just 3 months before the 2008 financial collapse. Perfect timing. Or perhaps very good information. Some would call it insider knowledge. Urquhart's financial activities had been investigated, but no charges had been brought. The man came out clean, for he had very good friends. The door-to-door inquiries had begun to yield results. The white van was probably a delivery vehicle. A construction company was operating in the area, and one of its employees had been driving a vehicle at that time. A dead end. But another clue had emerged. In the week before Urquhart's death, he'd had an argument with his neighbor, Ronnie Bell. The two men had been shouting at each other. What was it about? Nobody knew exactly, but Valentine's instincts had been triggered. "What do we know about Ronnie Bell?" he asked McAllister. "Retired businessman. He's been neighbors with the Urquharts for years, known to be close friends with them." "Very close," said Valentine thoughtfully. "He seemed quite comfortable with the widow yesterday." McAllister raised his eyebrows. "An affair?" "We don't know yet, but we will find out." The autopsy report had also arrived. The cause of death was shock and blood loss. The victim had been beaten before being impaled on the stake. There were numerous bruises on his face and body, and an interesting detail. A high amount of alcohol had been found in the victim's stomach. He had been drinking before he died, or been made to drink.
As Valentine delved deeper into Urquhart's past, a shadowy second arc began to emerge. He wasn't just a business tycoon. A seething underbelly of enemies laid a heavy weight over the man's name. A former partner accused him of treachery. He spoke of a profit denied, a lawsuit lost, a life wrapped in the bankrupt's fold. From his lips, a story of desperation unfolded. A former employee spoke of graver fears. A woman's plea for justice gone unheard. A legal silence purchased with words. A non-disclosure agreement. A voice quieted. A shadow cast. And then there was the foundation, ostensibly a charity, but its story seemed insincere. Money flowing odd ways, a specter of doubt persisting through the years. Valentine shared his suspicions about his enemy's endless chorus, but McAllister's words resonated. It would be all for naught. Who was to blame? Which path to follow? Valentine's answer was firm. All of them. But first he would visit Ronnie Bell again. As night fell, Urquhart's true nature, in all its shades and tones, hung heavy in the air. In Valentine's mind, the questions lingered, a puzzle yet to be solved.
Midnight came again. Valentine was tossing and turning in bed. Claire was sleeping beside him, but the detective's eyes were fixed on the ceiling. Suddenly, he found himself at the landfill again. This time, it was different. Moonlight had painted everything silver. The piles of rubbish seemed to be moving, and in the distance, in front of the white tent, the little girl was waiting. This time, he approached. He saw the girl's face. She seemed familiar, but he couldn't remember. Who was this child? "Why are you here?" asked Valentine. The girl smiled, but didn't answer. She just pointed in a direction with her hand, behind the tent, into the depths of the rubbish piles. When Valentine looked in that direction, he saw something. A hand emerging from beneath the ground, then an arm, then a face. But this wasn't Urquhart. This was someone else. Who? Suddenly, the sky darkened. The wind began to howl. Rubbish flew into the air, and the little girl screamed. When Valentine opened his eyes, his heart was on the verge of stopping. He felt a burning sensation around the scar on his chest. This wasn't normal. These dreams weren't normal. In the morning, when Valentine arrived at the station, he felt exhausted. But there was unexpected news. Something had been found in the sweep of the landfill. A bag buried next to the victim. There were documents inside, and these documents were going to completely change the course of the case.
As the lab report lay on Valentine's desk, the breath hissed past his lips as he read the contents within the bag. In there, among the documents, was a list, amidst names of politicians, businessmen, and police officers, were vast sums of money and dates. This looked like a ledger, a bribe ledger. Urquhart had been paying people off for years, and someone wanted to bury this list with him. For what purpose? Perhaps to show the world this list. Perhaps it was Urquhart himself on the list, wanting to protect himself. Valentine searched the lines, his eyes falling on one name. Ronnie Bell, the neighbor, the man comforting the wife. 10 years ago, he had received £50,000 from Urquhart. For what? What had he given in return? When Ronnie Bell entered the interrogation room, sweat covered his face. He was shaken as he answered the question about the money. An old business deal, an investment, nothing illegal. Then why are you so nervous? The silence held him, his lips bit beneath his teeth. And then he began to cry. I'm having an affair with Sandra. For years. James knew, and he paid me to keep quiet. But I wanted more. Ronnie Bell told everything. A love story that began with Sandra 20 years ago. James's jealousy, the power of money, and ultimately a triangle that lasted for years. James went mad when he found out, Bell said. But he couldn't leave Sandra. The scandal would have been too big. Instead, he decided to buy me off. If I took the money, I promised to stay away. But I couldn't keep it. Did you kill him? Asked Valentine directly. Bell's eyes widened. No, never. I didn't love James, but I wouldn't have killed him. I was at home that night. I was talking to Sandra on the phone. The alibi was checked. The phone records confirmed it. Bell might not have been innocent, but he wasn't the killer either. Valentine began thinking again. Who was left? the former partner, the harassment victim, the fraud victims. But there was one more name: Adrian Urquhart, the son. When he reviewed the files again, he found interesting information about Adrian. The young man had been having serious problems with his father recently: financial disputes, inheritance arguments, and worse, Adrian had a drug history. He had spent time in a rehabilitation center. Valentine decided to talk to Adrian, this time alone. He wanted to learn about the dark sides of the father-son relationship. The interview with Adrian Urquhart ended differently than Valentine had expected. The young man told painful truths about his father: the abuse, the humiliation, years of emotional violence. "I didn't love my father, but I didn't kill him. Did I want to kill him? Maybe, but I couldn't do it." Valentine looked into Adrian's eyes. There was anger there. There was pain. But he didn't see murder. This was a detective's instinct, and years of experience supported it. But the killer was still out there, and the little girl was still coming to his dreams. When he returned home, Valentine sat in the dark for a long time. This case wasn't over yet. The names on the list, the unsolved connections, the unexplained dreams, everything was a piece of a puzzle. And perhaps the biggest question concerned himself. 50 units of blood, death twice over, rebirth. This experience had changed him. Perhaps he was now a member of the club of those who had returned from death's threshold. And this club's privileges included things that ordinary people couldn't understand. When the phone rang, he heard McAllister's excited voice. Another name on the list had been put under surveillance. A new lead had been found. The case was continuing. Valentine stood up, took his jacket, and headed for the door. Claire called after him. "Be careful." Always. But they both knew that wasn't entirely true. When the door closed, the darkness of the night swallowed him, and somewhere in the distance, the little girl in the red raincoat was smiling. The story wasn't over yet.